new movie about a toy coming to life and trying to kill people has dropped in theaters. So let's talk about it. Child's Play 2019 is a reimagining of the original Child's Play. This time, Chucky is an artificial intelligence toy whose safety features have been disabled. When his friendship with his owner and friend Andy is challenged, he's willing to kill to get his Andy back for himself. To be clear, this is a totally different version of the Child's Play story. It's probably best to go into this and view it as a new story about a killer doll than to see it as a remake of the original. Before I give you my take on it, go ahead and share what you thought about it down below in the comment section. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you somewhere in between on it? And let me know kind of your relationship with the past films in the franchise. With that said, let's get started talking about the good. And right off the bat, this is a good old-fashioned slasher film. It's set in modern times, it has modern aesthetics, but it's true to the things that you want out of a classic slasher film. That is to say, a bunch of people die in creative and nasty ways. Some of the kills are probably overly complex, but in a way that's true to the genre. So if you like slasher films and watching people getting taken out, you get a lot of that here. As I mentioned before, this is very much a reimagining of the Child's Play story and the Chucky character. In the original, whereas Chucky was an actual serial killer, here he's an AI gone wrong. So the movie is actually about the friendship between Andy and Chucky. Chucky is this very innocent, childlike character who's trying to be friends with Andy but doesn't understand the way the world works and has a few bugs inside of a system that leads to some terrible consequences. But Chucky's not trying to be evil in this version, he's trying to be a good friend, and that means he doesn't understand why Andy keeps rejecting these friendly gestures that he keeps doing, and it leads to scenarios where you actually feel sympathy for Chucky, you feel bad for him, and there's moments that are really emotional as Andy feels bad about the things he has to do to try and stop Chucky inside of it. So this is a whole new dimension inside of the franchise that we haven't really seen before. Add to that, because Chucky in this version is this robot that's able to walk around and is sort of like Siri or Alexa except in a robot body, it adds a bunch of new dimensions into the story. Whereas the original one, people didn't believe Andy because he was saying his doll had come alive. Here, the doll is alive, and so it's a totally different dynamic in the way he's relating to other people and what they do and don't believe. Likewise, what Chucky is able to do because of his way he's able to interact with technology is very different, which creates some creative new ways for him to do things. Likewise, humans are able to track him and pay attention to him in new ways because of all of this as well. Because of the nature of Chucky in this film as this malfunctioning toy that just wants to be friends, they're able to create this interesting tension about the way that they make him creepy. He's creepy at the beginning because he's this overzealous toy trying to be friends, but they create these lines that are repeated that mean something very different in the middle of the film and then very different when you move into the third act of the film. And it's just an interesting way to build the tension and creepiness inside of a story like this. Not that it's the most brilliant script ever written, but there's some clever and smart stuff that they're able to do with this idea about what if Siri was a robot that's a jealous homicidal friend trying to win you back. From there, you gotta talk about the cast, who's actually mostly pretty good here. Aubrey Plaza is the standout as this mom who's got some pretty big faults, but she's doing her best to try and win her son over and mom the best that she can. And she brings her usual sense of humor to the mix, and she's able to have some extra dimensions inside of it and probably makes the character a little bit more likable than she would be otherwise. Also, the actor playing Andy is quite good. He can emote, he can be this lonely, introverted kid who's trying to make some friends and makes friends with this robot of his, only to realize his robot friend's evil. He can play all of the appropriate dimensions. There's also like a neighbor family who are quite charming for the most part, and some friends that there's some fun dynamics with all of that. And one final positive on this one, there's some really nice little Orion Easter eggs. That's the studio that put the film out. They were really big back in the 80s, and there's some nice little winks for fans of 80s films inside of this one. From there, let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. The big one that comes to mind is Mark Hamill's performance as Chucky. Now, he doesn't do anything wrong. He's perfectly serviceable for the film that we're making, but the character of Chucky himself is so larger than life in the other films that when they kind of bring it down to just kind of this AI gone wrong personality, there's not nearly as much there for Mark Hamill to work with. He doesn't do anything particularly wrong. He also doesn't do anything particularly memorable. It seems like anybody else probably could have played this performance just as well as he did, and they only cast him more so as a marketing device rather than because he had this very inspired performance. And all of this goes back to simply the fact that Brad Dourif's Chucky is so iconic. This one isn't really all that iconic. It's just an interesting character because of the dynamics of all of it. And some of that goes to another mixed aspect of this film, is that I think the fact that it is a Child's Play remake is one of the things that holds it back. They have so many new, fresh ideas of their own, but fans of the original series are gonna watch this and just see all the things that they changed. I think it stands pretty nicely on its own, but when you call it a Child's Play remake, there's a lot of things you kind of expect from it that aren't here, and a lot of things that are wildly different about this film. So I think making it a remake of Child's Play holds it back a little bit. From there, let's move on to the negative. And the big thing that comes to mind is that this is tonally pretty uneven. They establish a certain tone in the relationship between Andy and Chucky, and then they introduce some friend characters into the mix, and it feels like they're two totally different movies. The stuff with the friends gets a lot more slapstick humory, especially after the first big major kill inside the film, and there's this whole little plot line about a present for the neighbor that feels totally different from the stuff with Chucky himself that can kind of have a little bit of emotion to it, and this is just kind of cornball humor at times. The movie probably also has a few too many ideas and subplots going on here. There's so much to explore just with the idea of friendship with Chucky and Andy, and the jealousy that kind of unfolds with the neighbor and other friends inside of the mix, that it starts throwing out some other ideas. Like in the third act, it starts going a little bit bonkers with some of this stuff, and there's a subplot about a boyfriend, and there's a subplot about kind of the maintenance man at the apartment complex, and none of these kind of other things are really fully explored. They're just kind of thrown out there. Like some of the stuff in the third act, I think they were just setting up where they're gonna go with a potential sequel, but here it just seemed like they threw some ideas out there. It was like, well, that's a pretty big idea to just kind of drop in this movie and not explore. As this is a Chucky movie, I was not crazy about the design of Chucky himself. When they first introduced him in the first scene of the film, I didn't really buy it as a toy that would be marketed to the general public. Then again, when they re-released Teddy Ruxpin a couple years ago, it's just as creepy as this Chucky doll inside of this film, so maybe I'm wrong that toy companies are kind of bonkers. Then finally, I mentioned before that I think one of the biggest things holding this movie back is that it is a Child's Play remake, and the movie feels a little bit to me like maybe they had a script that wasn't a Child's Play remake. It was kind of Stranger Things-esque with a group of friends that their toys kind of come to life and they have to battle them, and then the studio heads told them to convert it into Child's Play. That's kind of what this movie felt like. Either that or they had a Child's Play remake and the studio head say, hey, can you add a group of friends into it? That worked really well with It or Stranger Things, because the friends feel kind of out of place inside of the movie. Thematically, they work with Chucky's jealousy, but tonally, they just don't match the movie all around them, and it seems like there's just the wrong amount of the friends inside of this script. Real quick, before I give you my final take on the movie, be sure to share your thoughts down below in the comment section. We're going to disagree. That's the fun part. Just don't be a jerk about it. Also, come back in a few days. I'm gonna rank all of the Child's Play movies, and if you want more content from me before that, I got a playlist right up here with some of my rankings of the top horror franchises. On its own merits, this is a fun and creepy slasher film with some gnarly kills and a few tonal issues here and there. But if you are a Child's Play purist, you're probably going to hate this movie. But I'm not a purist. It's a B overall. It's a 7.5 on the entertainment scale. And if you're a slasher fan, go ahead and check this one out. Just know it's not the Brad Dourif Chucky movies. It's something new, and watch it on its own terms. Be sure to come back in a couple of days for my ranking of the Child's Play movies, or right now, check out that playlist right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.